All right, keeping an eye on the latest forecast track for Hurricane Francine coming in from the National Hurricane Center, making landfall Wednesday afternoon, early evening along the coast of Louisiana, most likely as a high-end Category 1 hurricane, and then quickly racing off towards the north into perhaps central Mississippi by early Thursday morning. But do note, this has slowed down just a little bit on the timing, where earlier thinking maybe this might come in onto the Louisiana coastline maybe just after maybe 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, maybe just a little bit later, and we're starting to see sort of that trend in some of the model guidance, which may delay some of the impacts that we see from Francine as we go into the day on Wednesday into Thursday morning. Here's the latest satellite image, and today we've seen more thunderstorm activity try to wrap around the center, but overall, looking at the presentation, it's still not the most symmetric system. It is still battling some dry air and also battling a little bit of wind shear. The further north this goes, it is going to start to encounter more wind shear. The question is, how much of an impact is the wind shear going to have before it makes landfall? And it's going to be all about the timing. We have this ridge of high pressure in the eastern Gulf. The clockwise flow around that has been steering Francine to the north. We've seen this dip in the jet stream that is trying to tug Francine to the north. And as this trough, we call that, as that starts to dig down and pull Francine, we'll start to see that wind shear interact with the system, but then also see the system start to speed up. The other question is, once this trough digs far enough south, there's a lot of dry air over Mexico and Texas. Will some of that dry air also try to inhibit some of the development, or at least halt some intensification as it approaches the coast? So the window of opportunity for it to intensify is basically between about now and about early tomorrow afternoon before it makes landfall. The further north it goes, the wind shear does start to increase, but again, there's some question on just how much of an impact will the wind shear have as it begins to approach land. The other thing is, if you go back to that animation here, once we go back to the end, if some of that dry air starts to wrap around it, it could be a situation as it's moving inland. The top half of the hurricane on radar may look like it has heavier rain bands, and maybe the southern end of the storm may have less in the way of rain, but still really strong winds on the south side of the storm. So here's a look at the tropical weather alerts, tropical storm warnings in effect for South Mississippi that extends over into South Alabama. What are we expecting here in South Mississippi? Now, the forecast track continues to take the hurricane west of us over into Louisiana. Now, if it takes that eastern side of the forecast cone, that would put more impacts on us here in South Mississippi, and we could see those rain bands produce winds over 60 miles per hour at times. That could produce some sporadic power outages. Of course, anytime you have a landfalling system to our west, we're going to see perhaps the opportunity for spin-up tornadoes, so that will be a possibility. The time frame we're looking at, well, the timestamp here I've put here between noon and Thursday morning, we may have to kind of nudge this over to maybe tomorrow evening, maybe after 3 or 4 o'clock going into early Thursday morning, just depending on how fast we're going to see that storm move in. Here's the other thing. We've seen a trend with all the model guidance of more of an easterly shift, and these are the latest model tracks. The forecast cone goes across southeast Louisiana, but a lot of the models are just kind of on the east side of that. So that's why we just want you to be cautious, because again, if some of those, if the model or if the storm does take that easterly track, we could see more impacts. Now, coming in just before the 10 o'clock show tonight, we did just get a new model run of our in-house model here at WLOX. We refer to as Futurecast a lot of times. And it does line up with timing of the Hurricane Center forecast cone, and that's what I have overlaid here. But notice, the model is on the east side of the forecast cone, and even if it does take that easterly track, we could see some strong winds across South Mississippi late tomorrow night, going into 9, 10, past midnight into early Thursday morning. And while I will say this model is one of the more easterly ones and more aggressive on the east side, it could potentially put stronger winds over us. So I just want you to be prepared for that should that happen. As far as power outages are concerned, can't rule out some spotty power outages across South Mississippi, but more likely over into Louisiana where the forecast track takes it across. Rainfall up to 6 inches, especially where we get those rain bands going over the same areas. Not necessarily everyone gets that. Storm surge 3 to 5 feet, up to 6 feet is possible in some low-lying areas, especially if it takes that easterly track. Same thing over into Jackson County. Timing this out on Futurecast, and again, Futurecast is more on the east side of things when it comes to the model guidance, but as we go into tomorrow morning, we could see off and on showers, maybe some pockets of heavier downpours, rain bands coming in. As we go into the late evening hours after about 3 to 6 o'clock, Futurecast again is a little bit further off towards the east. We could see perhaps a very stormy night across South Mississippi, especially if it takes more of that easterly track across the area. 7-day forecast, it looks like this. Again, alert days for Wednesday and Thursday. We just want you to stay weather aware as we track Francine. Thankfully, things are looking a lot quieter as we go into the weekend.